Okay, so in a huge celebration for hitting that juicy 1,000 subscriber count, I have started a Patreon. If you would like to monetarily support the work I do, you can find the link in the description below. The money will help me improve my channel, and patrons, depending on their tier, will have access to deep dive content early. They'll get a personal update from me every now and then, and they'll have a chance to vote on video topics. So, of course, no pressure. No matter what, you are still part of the Beccasphere. I love y'all. And I am very grateful for you. So, yeah. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beccasphere, where we talk about climate news and solutions. You've entered the weekly climate recap, where we look back at what progress is being made to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Today, we will cover news from August 5th to 11th, so let's go ahead and get started. All the places I mentioned that were on fire last week are still on fire this week. Fire overtook a power plant in Turkey, and people living on the island near Athens, Greece had to flee by boat. Also, temperatures reached 119.7 degrees Fahrenheit in Syracuse, Sicily yesterday, setting an all-time record for all of Europe, ever, which is insane. In my lovely state of California, the Dixie Fire has leveled the northern gold rush town of Greenville as it quickly became the second largest wildfire in the state's history, and only 21% contained. Yikes. In contrast, though, the bootleg fire that ravaged Oregon has finally been contained, so that's good. Also, side note, the Dixie Fire is believed to have been started by our utility company equipment sparking a flame again. This is not the first fire that's been started that way. You know, the same people that spam us with how to better prepare your family for an emergency commercials. PG&E, fix your infrastructure. Anyways, many parts of California have had to pick and choose who to give water to as reservoirs continue to evaporate. This is the worst drought the West has experienced in a century. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, updated its outlook on this year's hurricane season to expect about 70% probability of 15 to 21 named storms. They expect 7 to 10 of them will be classified as hurricanes, and 3 to 5 would be major hurricanes. So far, 5 storms have already been named this year. NOAA did not cite climate change in their outlook, which is interesting. Last year, there were 30 named storms. It was a bad year, 13 being hurricanes and 7 were major hurricanes. A few events last year were tied to climate change, as climate change makes hurricanes wetter and slower and take longer to die over land, causing more damage. That, coupled with sea level rise, makes the season more potent than ever before. A new study published in the journal Nature used satellite imagery to look at development in flood zones. It found that 10 times more people have moved into flooding zones than previously thought, up to 86 million people. They found development in flooded areas worldwide grew at twice the global rate. This means that some areas might have seen a 24% spike in people living in those areas from the year 2000 to 2015. Previous estimates only saw a 2% growth. Flooding can come from rivers, tropical storms, melting snow and ice, and dams and levees breaking. The US-based author has been in contact with insurance companies who are interested in their data to update their insurance plans. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has been collecting this kind of data for years, factoring in climate change impacts. However, they have been doing a really poor job of actually sharing that information and encouraging homeowners to buy flood insurance, which just hurts FEMA in the end, because then there'll be more disasters to cover. A recent report by the Government Accountability Office calls on Congress to require FEMA to provide flood insurance to anyone living in the 23,000 national flood insurance programs participating communities. Basically, that's calling on FEMA to reform the program, which hasn't worked well in years. Flood maps in the US also haven't kept up with climate change, particularly because doing so would result in more people being eligible for flood insurance. And as I mentioned in my video about flooding, which of course I will link here, that side I think, about 21 states don't even require areas to disclose flood risk to potential homeowners. Inside Climate News did a fabulous article about all of this, so you can find that linked in the source description below. Meanwhile, Moody, which rates corporate and government debt based on how willing they are able to pay off their debt, is set to buy RMS, a growing catastrophe risk management and modeling firm, for $2 billion from its parents, Daily Mail and General Trust. By doing so, they'll incorporate climate change risks into how likely different groups will be able to pay off their debts. And this further emphasizes the value that private finance companies see in incorporating climate risk assessments into their calculations. Honestly, that is the sector right now that's giving me some hope. A report by the British think tank Influence Map lays out how oil and gas companies spread misinformation about climate change and their practices over Facebook advertising. It found that 25 oil and gas companies spent $9.5 million to place more than 25,000 ads on Facebook's US platforms last year. This complacency by Facebook directly goes against the company's outward statements supporting climate change. And it also reminds me of how Amazon sells climate denial content on their site. Yes, like they do that. 20% of the top results for climate change book come up with misinformation. Ridiculous. And another side note, I also don't like how Axios Generate, which is their green newsletter, has advertisements from Chevron that kind of blend into their content as if they're fact. I'm not okay with that. That needs to stop. Influence Map also released an intelligence report showing that British groups representing heavy industry and transportation are responding quite negatively to EU's climate policies. These groups are funded by companies such as Volkswagen, Total Energies, and Repsol, who are meanwhile touting new emissions policies of their own. The think tank also surveyed 216 industry associations to find overwhelming support for moving towards net zero emissions by 2050, yet a large portion not supporting accompanying short-term action goals. Kind of making it seem like they want to just go from all to nothing, as if that's possible. You can read more of the report by clicking the link in the source section below. An investigative piece by Intercept found that the EPA's higher officials might be minimizing harmful impacts of chemicals to push them onto the market. They talked with 5 EPA health hazard assessors whose findings were all ignored after refusing to declare a particular chemical as safe for use. The scientists call these high-priority instances where manufacturers oppose their findings as hair on fire cases. It becomes an internal struggle between assessors who want to maintain honest work and EPA managers who want to please manufacturers by signing off on unsafe products. I highly recommend checking out the reporting in the description below because they did a lot of good work, and they even have leaked audio files and everything. Like, it's pretty damning. The White House announced that Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler will work with Biden to boost sales of EVs to 40 to 50% by 2030. Right now, EV sales represent only about 2 to 3% of the US market, so that would be a big boom. After that announcement, a group called the EV Charging Initiative formed to exceed 500,000 charging stations nationwide. Its members are an interesting combination of charging companies and environmental groups. Most notably, though, the membership also includes the Alliance for Transportation Electrification, which represents Ford, GM, and Honda, among other car companies. Exxon was recently suspended from a climate advocacy group that they started, the Climate Leadership Council, after the interview with their chief lobbyist was caught on camera by Greenpeace admitting that Exxon doesn't care about actually following through with carbon tax policies.
Actually, do we have a Shaggy reference we can use here?
She even got me on camera.
They even got him on camera. Thank you, Shaggy.
Watch Climate Town's video on that if you have no idea what I'm talking about. It is hilarious, but so depressing. But considering that the Climate Leadership Council was also started by ConocoPhillips, BP, Shell, and Total, I'm not sure I would trust that activist group in the first place. A study by the University of Reading found that climate change has increased airplane turbulence by 15% and will increase it 3 times than it is now by 2050. Researchers found that temperature differences between the poles and the equator have decreased, and therefore wind speed in higher altitudes will also increase. So that's what kind of increases the turbulence. And then the first part of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC's, 6th report dropped and made everyone shit their pants. I will be honest, I didn't read it. I've already known what they would say for months by doing this climate recap stuff, and frankly, I don't need to depress myself more than I already am. If you're like me and you can't bring yourself to actually read all of it, several of my fellow climate YouTubers have already broken it down for you. So check out Climate Adam, Dr. Gilbs, and Zenturo's videos for some good summaries. But very quick bottom line, there's full scientific consensus now that climate change is man-made, and things are getting worse a lot faster than we thought. At this point, we're very likely to pass the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. As you can see from almost any projection, they expect us to. At this point, every little bit we can reduce matters. And of course, I will go ahead and link the report in the source section below. Something also I will note is that the report does emphasize a lot about just quickly dropping methane emissions fast, because they dedicated a whole chapter to it, and it's kind of a low-hanging fruit to curb the trajectory, like give it a little boost, or boost down, I guess. So we could use that. Okay. Let's counteract this with the rest of it being good news. The offshore wind company US Wind announced plans to build one of the largest wind farms off the US East Coast, creating hundreds of union jobs in an area that needs them after the Bethlehem Steel Corporation shut down. The Canadian company Helene is opening its second US solar panel facility next month, this time in Florida. The New York State Energy Research and Development Authority added $52.5 million in incentives for 50,000 low to middle income households to join the solar community program. Indian oil to telecom conglomerate Reliance became the latest to invest in the US energy storage company Ambri, which is also supported by Bill Gates. They provided $144 million of their $10 billion green energy plan to become net zero carbon emissions by 2035. Shell settled a case with a Nigerian community and is set to pay a US equivalent of $111.68 million for an oil spill they caused 50 years ago. They previously tried to only pay a little over $41 million, but the community wasn't having it, and good for them. Greta Thunberg made the inaugural cover of Scandinavian Vogue. In her feature, she talked about the harmful environmental impacts of the fast fashion industry. Very appropriate. She also calls out efforts by clothing companies to greenwash their products by using terms like sustainable. I'd like to share this quote from her. It doesn't necessarily have to do with fast fashion, but more just climate activism in general. Quote,
"This is some kind of misconception about activists, especially about climate activists, that we are just negative and pessimists and we are just complaining and we are trying to spread fear, but that's the exact opposite. We are doing this because we are hopeful. We are hopeful that we will be able to make changes necessary."
Beautifully said, Greta. The $1 trillion US bipartisan infrastructure bill passed in the Senate this week, so now it's the House's turn. I talked about this last week on what's included in the bill related to climate change, but I did miss a fun one, which is that the money will be used to boost urban tree equality in a program called the Healthy Streets Program. The bill will provide $100 million to increase tree cover in poorer areas. The plan will also encourage cities to adopt porous pavement to better absorb storm water and reduce urban heat spots. Generally, the wealthier the area, the more trees it has, and similarly, the less concrete it has. So this leads to a huge contrast in air pollution and heat waves from richer areas to poorer ones. Several organizations have been propping up in recent years to change this, but an influx of money from Congress would definitely help speed up the process. The Senate also approved the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint full of climate investment, along party lines, of course. Next up, the House. And that was the climate recap from August 5th to 11th. Please let me know if I missed anything in the comments below. And again, if you are able to, please consider supporting Beccasphere on Patreon. Until next time, remember to talk about the climate crisis every single day and to support your local news organizations. Bye for now.